Lord. Hi, I'm apparently live. And here we are with a very messy background behind me. I haven't quite finished unpacking, guys, at least in here. We're going to talk about the Kolb reflective tool today, okay? And I'm going to make this as short and sweet as I can, so because I know how busy you are. So here is a slide I prepared earlier. Okay, so that's the Kolb reflective diary, and I've got a funny feeling it's reversed. I hate that. So what we're going to do, and I will upload some information for you as well so that you can have a look, but here is the actual Kolb model, which is a reflective model, circular, as you can see. And I did talk to some of the people on Thursday night last week about the Kolb. I want you to be able to record, just jot down for yourself in the first instance, a critical incident, one that didn't resolve at all or didn't resolve satisfactorily. I don't want something that ended up happily ever after. That's not what a Kolb reflective tool is for, generally. It's a tool to help you learn to move from where you're going around in perhaps a circle. Similar things are happening, might be a different story, but similar reactions. And so this is to break that cycle and help you to move to a solution that will be more satisfactory for you. So let's start with a critical incident. Now, because I think this is looking backwards to you, which is very annoying, here we have the concrete experiences, which is the very first part of the circle. If we look back at this one, this is the top, and that's the critical incident. Now, I want you to write about a critical incident. And I only want, and this is the hard bit, maybe a sentence of 50 words or less. Okay? And that is a challenge, isn't it? Because usually what we've said is, well, I had to prepare a report, and I had a team, and so went on leave, and and it goes on and on and on. And so you have this really long, because you're trying to explain to the other reader who you expect is going to read it, rather than just writing it for yourself, but you're explaining it because you think I'm going to read it. So you have this huge long story, and the story is not relevant. It's relevant to you, of course, but for the purposes of a Kolb, it isn't relevant. So what I want you to do is think about it from the point of view of this. What happened, but not the story, but the what happened. And I'm going to read them because it says, I felt bullied or abused. I felt betrayed. I felt ignored. I felt harassed. Now you're going to put your word here, but sometimes it takes you a while to think about what really happened. You know, you were in a meeting, your direct report stole your report and owned it as if he'd or she'd done it herself, say. Or you weren't given warning and you were thrown under the bus at the meeting and you had no idea, and so you were caught without any way of kind of gathering your thoughts in time. And you left that meeting furious, absolutely ropeable, so much so that you couldn't really function for a while. So you could tell that story, and it would always be about the other person, what they did to you and how it happened. But that's not what a Kolb is about. So if you do that, if you write this long thing and he did this and then they said that and then, and I was angry, and they do it all the time. It's not the first time they've done it, so on, so on, so on. We go nowhere. We've got a story, and you've been hard done by, perhaps, or you're just really still very angry. And, of course, if they've done it before, more than once, then it triggers an even more passionate response because you're waiting for it. You're going, here they go, ah, gotcha. You're doing it again, right? So it's all focused on what they are doing rather than focusing on what's happening to you. So the Kolb is a brilliant tool to go, well, what really went on then? You know, if, for example, the person let you down badly, it might have been your direct report, your boss, your CEO, and you really felt let down by their behaviour, by their actions or their inaction or their not including you or whatever it was. So when that's happened, what is it that in fact is the feeling? Was it that you felt betrayed? Because this is what you have to hone in on. Was it that you felt humiliated? Humiliation is a really good one. Or abandoned is another good one. Because it goes to the heart of what was really happening for you. Not for them, not what you thought they did or what they do every week or month or, you know, regularly. It's what you felt happened to you. So the what happened is I felt insulted, I felt set up, I felt cornered, I felt abused, etc. So I'll put this slide in there for you to check in. I mean, there's plenty of other words, of course, but they're really the sorts of things that you've got to be thinking that sits behind what's gone on, okay? And we'll talk about this in a minute about how useful it is for your team, for the members of your, you know, the people who report to you. But that's another one, but it's a brilliant tool for that. But first, you've got to master it, okay? Hence why I want you to do this. So the very second one, after you've described your what happened, then you've got to look at this next one here, which is the reflective observation. They're really kind of big words for basic common sense stuff. So what I like you to, you know, you could read up on this. There's a Wikipedia on Kolb and plenty of stuff on Google. However, how I like to do this is to look at the reflective observation is ask the question, how did it feel physically? How did that feel for you? So I've started the sentence by saying, when it happened, which is whatever the what happened was, the abuse, the abandoned, the blah, blah, blah. When that happened, when that incident happened, I blushed, I held my breath, my focus narrowed, I couldn't see or hear anyone anymore. My mind was just focused on what had upset me. My heart was pounding. You know, you could actually feel it in my head throbbing. I felt nauseous. I felt really like I was going to be sick. My shoulders tensed, you know, they were right up here. My whole body stiffened, you know, my knuckles were white. Quite often we're not tuned into that, are we? You know, and that's the thing. We've got to be really tuned in to what's going on for us. And so this is the reflective observation is that next one around how physically the visceral feelings that went on, if we were to replay, slow it down and think about what our body did, because that's the first one. Then we've gone, so what happened? We've then gone round the circle to reflective observation about how physically it showed up. Now, the third one, what we do is we get up onto the balcony and we look down upon ourselves, okay? We're up there, we're looking down at this scene. You know the one? So we've got all of this playing out, and we're just observing from a distance. And this is what we call abstract conceptualization. Very big words for a very basic activity. Because usually once we've realized it's about feeling abandoned or betrayed or set up or humiliated, whatever it was, or a mixture of all of those things too sometimes. What happens is, and I like this one to start with words like upon reflection, or when I make sense, I realize that, ... when I feel, and so this is your next slide that I'll send you, when I feel, and that's when you insert what you wrote in the what happened, when I feel humiliated or abandoned or all of those things, hurt, humiliated, I react with anger, defense, silence, the old passive-aggressive stuff, withdrawal, aggression. You might always, your first line of defense is to attack. I realize that these feelings ignite a default reaction. Now, there's a lot about the default behaviours in Thomas Kilmann's conflict model, which if you were in a face-to-face class, I would run a conflict scenario, which is really, really interesting and helps you to sort of get to the nub of default reactions, your default behavior, I should say, because, what's happening here is that when everything's perfect and you really had a great night's sleep and everything else in your world is just brilliant, some of the things that might have set you off, in a perfect day, you'd probably take in your stride or at least handle it a little differently. It's when things aren't going well, when the tensions are high, you're already feeling something less than perfect. Then when something like this happens, what happens to us is we get absolutely blindsided and we go into default. What happens when everything else is really shocking, and then we go back into our default behaviours, whether that's anger or whether that's withdrawal and silence, whether it's, sarcasm, joking, what they are. They're default ones that play out when we're not focused consciously on our behaviour and we're, a little bit out of control, basically. And I could give you some doozies of when that happens. Here, present tense here, happens to me. I try and keep it under control more with good sleep and good reflection and all sorts of stuff. But, that still happens. Pardon me for being human. And anyway, so in your abstract conceptualization, that part, you're going to write, when I make sense of this, I realize that when this happens, my default behavior is this. And that I'm not consciously in control of it because it's triggered a strongly held value, usually around loyalty or honesty or work ethic. It's one of those tricky ones that are setting those values that you hold deep. So, and they're so deep sometimes you don't join the dots between your behavior and what the value is that's been triggered. So somebody betrays you, the way you feel betrayed might not be my view of betrayal, but for you, loyalty is so important that that person doing something that triggers that is going to push you right into the hot button default, okay? Anyway, so that's your abstract conceptualization. That means you get up on the balcony and you make sense of, hey, when this happens, this is what can, under certain circumstances, what I will do. So you kind of get a sense of, so far you realize we've not talked about the other person at all. We've all talked about me, the person who it's happened to, not who you think's done it or who should be punished. It's about what's happened for me. Because once we understand that, we're then in control of our response. If you're thinking it's their fault and it's their behavior, there's nothing we can do about their behavior. No matter what you want to do. You can get angry and you can go tell on them, or you can, give them the silent treatment. But that's not going to change them. It's going to probably make it worse. But what you can do, what you do have control of, is yourself. So the final bit of your Kolb is this back to front slide, which is active experimentation. So it's the final part of the loop. Now, there's a guy called Peter Singh, or Singhi, who writes about, no, that's Chris Argyris, sorry, wrong person. Chris Argyris wrote about the double loop learning. And this is what this is basically, the Kolb double loop learning. So instead of going round and round and round and round the same circle, you do a second loop, which takes the new learning forward. So anyway, here we have for the active experimentation. So that starts with, next time, before this happens again, I will. So now you're going to go, oh, okay. So I've got a choice of things that I might do. So if it's someone, for example, who you kind of think they're going to do it again, they've done it before, and I know they're going to do it again. And you can add expletives about what you think of it. Okay, not for here though. So here we go, next time or before this happens again, I will. So what's the thing that you might do? And this is obviously dependent upon the issue, but it might be, before this happens again, I'm going to seek a meeting with Joe Bloggs or my boss and say, listen, the last time this occurred or the last time we had a meeting, I felt blah. Now I'd really like to move on and do some constructive work in advance to prepare so that I don't feel like that. I really want to be a positive, productive contributor. And that, stopped me last time because I behaved or I thought, or own it all. Don't be blaming anyone else because that doesn't work. So I might seek a meeting with the person, the perpetrator, or your boss or someone to get some support or come up with strategies and say, look, this really worried me. What do you think about me doing this? Do you think that would help? Get a mentor to talk with you about it, or, as I say, go straight to the source and say, listen, we need to work better together. And how about before the meeting we look at the agenda and we decide who's going to say what? Or at least I'd like to share with you my thoughts so that I don't get steamrolled or surprised. So all of those things, that's one sort of way, one option. Another might be setting up the ground rules or getting a full briefing before you ever walk into a meeting so that you know. And if that's not possible, then maybe, you try and put new procedures in place for you with the EA or something, saying, listen, I've been struggling with the run sheet. Can you give me a more detailed agenda with the notes that support it or whatever? So you get prepared. Or you do some agreements prior to a meeting with key supporters so that, you've got others that are knowing what might happen that you really trust, I should say, not rely on, but you trust, to say, listen, it's been really throwing me and I'm wondering whether I could gain your back, or you have my back, etc. So that's the final bit of the Kolb. So you have a go with the pro forma that I also have sent, but I'll send again, which gives you a little example, and it also does this. It has where you put your notes under each of those. So what happened, reflective observation, abstract conceptualization, and the final one, which is the active experimentation. So I have sent you those. I will alert you to the slides as well. And I'm just looking at the time and I can't see it anyway. Oh, yes, it's 20 minutes. So that's enough from me. And I'll talk to you about the terrific ways you can use it with your team later. So that's my Kolb. Thank you for watching. Now I don't know where to talk it. There it is. End. That's it.